What is the first thought that comes to your mind when I say the word Tawaif? I'm sure you get the image of a prostitute. Today, we embark on a journey to reclaim a misunderstood figure in Indian history, the Tawaif. Often portrayed in Bollywood films as mere courtesans, the reality of the Tawaif's life is far more nuanced and deserves a closer look.
कितनी अजीब बात है, एक तवाइफ जोगन बन गई।
हाँ, अजीब बात तो है।
A Tawaif was a highly successful courtesan, dancing girl, or female entertainer who catered to the nobility of the Indian subcontinent, particularly during the Mughal era. Known variously as Tawaifs in North India, Baijis in Bengal, and Naikins in Goa, these professional singers and dancers were dubbed as nautch girls during the British rule. For decades, both British colonial narratives and popular Bollywood films have painted Tawaifs with a single brushstroke. Seductive dancers and entertainers who catered solely to the whims of wealthy patrons. This reductive portrayal ignores the rich tapestry of their lives and contributions to Indian society. Tawaifs have existed for centuries in the Indian subcontinent, with one of the earliest references to the profession being the character Vasant Sena from the 5th century BC Sanskrit drama Mritchakatika. Many girls were taken at a young age and trained in both performing arts including Mujra, Kathak and Hindustani classical music, as well as literature, poetry, Tumri and Dadra. The training of young Tawaifs also encompassed Urdu writing and enunciation, as well as social skills employed in cultivating patrons and retaining them, particularly the complex etiquette associated with their craft in which they were seen as experts. Once a trainee had matured and possessed a sufficient command over dancing and singing, she became a Tawaif, high-class dancers who served the rich and noble. Unsurprisingly then, their training in music and dance started at a very young age under the guidance and tutelage of renowned ustads.
आज से खान साहब तुम्हें भी गाना सिखाएंगे, सीखोगी? जी। बड़े गुनी उस्ताद है, दिल लगा के सीख लोगी तो सारे लखनऊ में नाम हो जाएगा। सब तुम्हारा गाना सुनने आया करेंगे, दरबार तक रसाई होगी।
Young girls regularly spent hours in riyaz, learning songs and dance to the exacting standards set by their teachers. The term riyaz from Arabic connotes abstinence, devotion, discipline and hard labor. At a mundane level, regular riyaz is necessary for a flawless performance before an audience. Many well-known Tawaifs practiced and learned music throughout their careers, seeking masters from different music traditions or gharanas to add to their performance style. The Tawaif's introduction into her profession was marked by a celebration, the so-called Missi ceremony, that customarily included the inaugural blackening of her teeth. It is also believed that young Nawabs-to-be were sent to these Tawaifs to learn Tamiz and Tehzeeb, which included the ability to recognize and appreciate good music and literature, perhaps even practice it, especially the art of ghazal writing. They also became teachers for the sons of wealthy and elite families who would often send their sons to kotas so that they could learn Urdu speaking, poetry and etiquette from Tawaifs. The boys would be told to sit and observe how a Tawaif goes about her interactions. The uppermost echelons of Tawaifs were entrusted with the responsibility of teaching adab and qaida to the kings and young princes. They would also familiarize the royalty with the finer nuances of poetry, music, dance and literature. By the 18th century, they had become the central element of polite, refined culture in North India. Like the geisha tradition in Japan, their main purpose was to professionally entertain their guests, and while sex was often incidental, it was not assured contractually. However, by the time the British Raj had annexed Punjab, the services of Tawaifs were no longer valued, and even the most highly trained dancing girls were reviled as lewd by the Victorian standards of the British. Despite this, British men were happy to take local women as concubines and mistresses, but were uninterested in becoming patrons of the formerly well-tolerated Tawaifs of Lahore, and even less interested in spending lavish sums upon them. Movies like Mughal-e-Azam fall short in not just historical accuracy, but also in honestly representing the tradition. From the over-romanticization to the inferior and the frail financial and social situation, everything is a dull shadow of the actual courtesans enriching the Mughal courts. Arguably, the most popular movie of this genre, Umrao Jaan, set in 1840s Lucknow, is the story of a young girl kidnapped and sold to a brothel where she is trained to be a courtesan.
बीबी, ये छोकरी आप मुझे दे दीजिए, मैं पालूंगी, माल आपका, खिदमत मैं करूंगी।
तुम ही पालो।
Though problematic in the sense that it shows the courtesan culture as something one is forced into, the movie is otherwise a Hindi cinema classic. From the soulful music and dance performances in Dil Cheez Hai Kya and Ye Kya Jagah Hai Dosto, to Rekha's graceful depiction of the character as she whirls in rich anarkalis.
वो गजल भी तो आप ही की थी।
ऐ हटाइए, यूं ही तुकबंदी कर लेती हूँ।
इतने उम्दा कलाम को तुकबंदी कह रही?
Admittedly, the developments under the British is not the central plot, but set against that backdrop, it portrays the debasement in a more subtle manner. Though a more upfront depiction is presented when Jaan returns to her brothel to find it deserted and looted by colonial forces. So who were these courtesans, or Tawaifs as they were known? Why do we now think of Tawaifs as prostitutes? As historian Professor Veena Oldenburg wrote in her book The Making of Colonial Lucknow, to relate Tawaifs to prostitution is an extremely corrupt portrayal of the institution. The word Tawaif comes from Tauf, which means to go round and round. Tauf was used for a band of itinerant musicians, and as Tawaifs were highly skilled musicians, singers and dancers, they were given this name. It was a term of respect, not derision. However, the patriarchal notion of our society soon relegated these socially, financially and sexually independent women to markets of flesh trade. Though the term Tawaif is fairly recent, the culture it refers to is not. Much before the term came in popular use derogatorily or otherwise, they were references to Devdasis. Literally, the servants of gods. They were meant to serve and worship the residing deity of the temple for the entirety of their life. Since dance and music comprised an essential part of temple worship, they, along with being the caretakers of the temple, were also repositories of different art forms. Masters of Bharatnatyam, Kuchipudi and Odissi, Devdasis were highly ranked in society and awarded land, property and jewelry by royal patrons for their role.
चंद्रमुखी नाम है ना तुम्हारा?
लोग तो देवदासी भी कहते हैं हमें।
The homes of Tawaifs, known as kotas, were vibrant cultural centers where poets and scholars gathered to exchange ideas, recite verses and debate philosophy. Tawaifs were often the lifeblood of these gatherings, captivating audiences with their wit, intellect and artistic prowess. It is true that Tawaifs received financial support from patrons, typically wealthy men of society. However, this patronage system wasn't akin to prostitution. Tawaifs enjoyed a certain degree of independence and agency. They could choose their patrons and negotiate terms for their performances and companionship. Some Tawaifs even amassed significant wealth and influence, owning properties and sponsoring artists themselves. They were patrons of the arts, contributing to the flourishing cultural scene of their time. And then came the British Raj with its Victorian models, viewed Tawaifs with suspicion and labelled them as courtesans. This discriminatory perception unfortunately seeped into popular culture, including Bollywood films.
क्या तवाइफ को दिल नहीं होता? क्या उसे मोहब्बत करने का अधिकार नहीं होता, चुनी बाबू?
Soon, this escalated to physical degradation of the basest kind, as the most attractive of them were forced into British garrisons to service the troops there, and those that had somehow escaped the moral goading and economic coercion of Christian missionaries and officials were now shoved in the flesh trade, completing the transformation from Tawaif to bazaar girls. However, some did manage to escape the displacement to the streets, and those who did got welcome respite in the film industry. Some were lured by the gramophone industry, others to Parsi theatre, and yet so many others moved to Bombay to Bollywood. The first women to act in Indian movies in female roles were Tawaifs. Not just in acting, they were successful as writers, directors and producers too. Jaddan Bai set up her own production house called Sangeet Movie Tone, while Fatima Begum became the first women to direct a Bollywood film. However, soon enough these doors were also closed for them, literally, as playback singers were asked to use back entrances at radio stations. Slowly their contributions were erased as cinema moved to portray courtesans as stock characters with lives intertwined in a morality tale. while there were others who were not even this fortunate, as displacement placed them directly onto the red light zones of the cities where they are forced to barter their bodies. These red light zones today are the only homes available to most Tawaifs, as also the new hubs attracting helpless and desperate women to this hated profession, sometimes by brute force, other times by force of their circumstances.
अब तेरे को 40-50 रुपए के रोज दिलाएंगे, चलो बोल के लेके आया। हमें क्या पता है ये जीवी रोड में छोड़ के चली गई, बेच दिया के छोड़ के गए, तो हम रास्ता ही भूल गए ना।
As the patronage changed from Nawabs and Rajas to business communities and rural urban gentry, the art form was modified to cater to the need of the new customers. Performances became more dance than song. Masters in Kathak, Dadra, Ghazal and Thumri were now reduced to dancing to double-meaning Bollywood vulgarity. Though in name the evolution from Tawaif to Mujrewali to bar dancer and item girl seems marginally better than the street markets trading flesh. But in practice, only a thin line exists between bar dancers and sex workers, often the precariousness of their existence pushing them to the latter. Thankfully, a shift is underway. Some recent films and series are attempting to portray Tawaifs with greater depth and complexity. Series like Heeramandi showcase their artistic talents and independent spirits. This is a positive step towards reclaiming the true essence of the Tawaif. Tawaifs weren't simply entertainers, they were cultural custodians. They played a vital role in preserving and transmitting artistic traditions. Their legacy can still be seen in the rich tapestry of Indian music, dance and poetry. The story of the Tawaif is a compelling reminder of the dangers of cultural appropriation and stereotyping. It's time we move beyond the Bollywood caricature and appreciate the multifaceted reality of the Tawaif. These women were artists, intellectuals and cultural powerhouses who deserve recognition for their profound impact on Indian society. What are your thoughts on the portrayal of Tawaifs in popular culture? Have you encountered any historical accounts or artistic works that depict them more accurately? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more fables from the filmy world. Cheers, take care.